Shweta, I think we should start now because 40 participants have joined and more participants will join when we actually start speaking about this program. So good
Sure,
morning
sir,
to all of
sure.
you. I'm starting. Good morning to all of you. Uh, Shweta Sethi, Sarang Mahajan, and which man from he's from which country?
Amsterdam, sir.
Okay. And my colleague, Dr. Nitin Paliwal. Good morning, all the audience who had joined this webinar. See, Elsevier is the most important publisher, particularly in STM, science, technology, and medicine. Worldwide, they are number one. And it is very fortunate to have them here to speak on how to get published, right? So we are getting this information from the world's top most publisher. They will speak on insights on best practices, pitfalls, and AI. What is the perspective of publishers? And I think when you are speaking with the audience from University of Delhi, please keep in mind that as per Scopus, which is other product from Elsevier, among the universities, we are at number one in terms of number of research publications, in terms of the citations. Every year we receive for our publications, as well as in terms of H index. We have more than 300 H index for our institution. So it should be a good collaboration, not only for this webinar, but for further publications also. I welcome you all, those who are from the speakers, as well as my learned audience from University of Delhi. Now the diocese to the people from Elsevier.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir, for such a warm
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank
Um,
you.
yes, sir. A very good morning to all of you. It's a beautiful morning in Delhi today, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining this session. I'm Shweta Sethi. I'm the Customer Success Manager at Elsevier. Welcoming you all to the today's session, getting published insights on best practices, pitfalls, and AI in publishing workflow. As we all see that research output is growing exponentially in last few years since the onset of pandemic, and at the same time we also have to acknowledge that there is information overload everywhere. The research has become much more complex with AI tools taking their place into research workflow, and it becomes all the more important that we conduct research judiciously with right resources and in a right manner. Before we get started, let me quickly share what today's session is all about and how it will be useful for the research community at University of Delhi. Publishing research can often feel very overwhelming sometimes, from choosing the right journal to understanding why a paper gets accepted or rejected. In today's session, we'll hear directly a publisher's perspective on how the publishing process really works and what researchers can do to improve their chances of success. Dr. Wageman will talk about what editors look for in a strong submission and how to approach journal selection and peer review more strategically. He will also highlight some of the most common mistakes that authors make, things that may seem small but often led to rejections and long delays, which are not welcomed by the researchers, and how we can actually avoid them. A very timely part of today's session will also focus on the use of AI in academic publishing. With AI tools becoming part of many research workflows, this session will clarify what is considered acceptable use and what requires disclosure and how publishers are corresponding to these changes. Equally important, the session will also touch on ethics in academic publishing, including authorship, plagiarism, and other things. So, with this, I would just say that by end of the session, we hope you are able to walk away with a clearer understanding of the publishing landscape, greater confidence in preparing your manuscripts, and practical guidance you can actually apply to your future research submissions. With this, I would like to hand over the session to Dr. Wageman to take it forward from here. Thank you so much, everyone, once again. Over to you, Dr. Wageman.
Yeah, thank you, Shweta. It's I'm assuming you can hear me.
Yes, very
It's
well.
very nice to be here. We do myself and Sarang do quite a few webinars in India, but today is extra special because I am in India. I'm actually in Delhi at the moment.
Yes.
We're visiting IIT Delhi later today, and well, speaking to you at the University of Delhi. I gather it was, as these things always are, difficult to find an appropriate time and an appropriate venue to do this in person, but online webinars make it much easier for a larger group of people to join. So obviously this works very well. Yeah, we're very happy to be here to have this opportunity to, as was introduced, speak to the most renowned University of India. So let's dive straight in. We have a lot of information to share. Hopefully it'll be useful. Sarang, do we have the slides up?
Yeah, I guess Shweta has to get the slides
Yeah,
down,
I've
then I can
just
always.
Okay.
okay.
Can everyone see the slides now?
It's getting loaded. Yeah, now we can
Yes,
see.
we can see them. All right, let's go to 2 slides down.
Is it getting changed or
Not yet.
it's changed?
Yeah, now it's
Okay.
changed.
Yeah.
Now we're on the second slide. Yeah, so the overview of the presentation as Shweta has already described. So let's go on to the next slide, dive straight in. So one might ask, or you might not, but let's say internationally, we might ask, why are we visiting India now, and why do we put so much attention on India in our corporate strategy at Elsevier? So a few slides on that. Elsevier is a publisher of academic journals and books in all areas of science. So when we look at the output in India, we can also see that basically all the areas of science that we represent are also represented in India, or the other way around. The main focus areas that we see in India are computer science, engineering, and medicine, but there is a representation for everything. My background is in biomedicine, and currently I work together with Sarang on a portfolio of psychology journals. So that sits within the social sciences. There we see 6.9% of output from India in the social sciences. So definitely room to grow there with respect to the others. Next slide, please. Sorry. So when the main reason why we're here is that we've seen a very significant growth in the output of research content from India over the last few years. If you look at the difference between 2000, when it was barely registering on the scale, I'd say a couple of tens of thousands of papers, to 2025, when it was just under 400,000. And this is information that comes from Scopus. So this is not just Elsevier journals, but everything that's listed in the Scopus database. Alongside the increase in an echo. I hope it's gone. Sarang and myself were in the same room, but Sarang is now muted, so that shouldn't provide any echoes. Besides the increase in output, we also see an increase in what is called a field-weighted citation index. So that's the impact measured by citations of each paper published, normalized to 1 for each research field. So in that way, you can compare citation numbers across different research areas. And that's crept up slowly over time. It's it's difficult to improve field-weighted citation impact. And now for India, it's just above 1, which is really good. So 1 is sort of the gold standard, and everything above 1 is excellent. Next slide, please. So what we've also seen over time, and this is a slightly complicated graph. The complete bar shows the total output from India in Q1, 2, 3, and 4 journals, and then the different colors indicate in which quartile the papers have been published. So as you can see, the bottom box in light blue is the number of papers published in Q1 journals. And as you can see, the proportion of or the absolute number of papers published in Q1 journals has increased over time as well, as has the proportion in Q2 journals. And that's where most of Elsevier's journals reside, either in Q1 or Q2 of the Web of Science. So the volume is increasing, the quality is increasing, and as a large publishing house, we want to work together with the Indian academic community to ensure that those publications are published with us at Elsevier. Next slide, please. All right. So how do you find yourself publishing in a journal at Elsevier? Next slide. So as you might know, there are a lot of different journals out there. Some of them are fine, journals with the big publishers that you are familiar with are generally reputable, solid places to publish. But there is also a large number of journals out there that are less reliable and that don't have the best interests of the authors or the paper at heart. So we recommend that you use an approach that is that you can follow on the website Think, Check, Submit, which is quite a good way to evaluate any journal. I mean, if you've published with it before and you know of its reputation, then it's fine. But if it's a new journal that you are considering publishing in, this website has a very good checklist that you can follow to assess the journal or the publication that you want to submit to. If you go through the checklist and it all looks to be fine, then you could be relatively certain that the journal that you're submitting to is going to do a good job for you. If there are any red flags, I would advise you to reconsider. If you submit to an Elsevier journal, then you can rest assured that we will do what's best for your research and your article. So coming to an Elsevier journal is always a good choice. All right, next slide. Thank you. So when you're looking at selecting a journal to publish in, it's all about what it is that you need as an author. So there are a couple of choices that need to be made early on in the process. So whether you want to follow the gold open access route, which means that the author or the institution pays for the publication, but everyone can read the publication after it's been published at no cost. What we see is that the number of times papers that are open access are read is much higher than non-open access papers. So visibility is increased. There might also be some benefit to the number of citations that paper gets, although that's somewhat less clear. For subscription journals, authors don't have to pay to be published, but the reader needs to have a subscription to the journal. Now, of course, many universities around the world have access to our journals, but not necessarily everyone. Next slide. Another consideration, and these are examples from the portfolio that I work on in psychology, but it is generally applicable. What kind of journal are you looking for? So one journal I'm responsible for is the Journal of Mathematical Psychology, which is hugely niche, publishes a few papers a year on a very specific topic. Another journal that also Sarang works on is Acta Psychologica, which is very, very broad within psychology and would publish anything that relates to psychology. So as an author, Are you looking to address a very limited audience, very specific audience that is completely covered by a niche journal, or do you want to step outside of those boundaries or that community and look for something more broad? Next slide, please. Another thing which is quite important are journal metrics, and there are universities around the world that have certain requirements, either related to the site score, which is calculated based on Scopus or the impact factor, or the quartiles in which these journals sit. Some universities require at least Q1 or Q2. Some are less clear on that, but there might be some requirements. So it's important that you know what the University of Delhi, in this case, will you to do in order to make the publications count for you, as well as be available to the readers. Next slide, please. So this is the same, but then about the impact factor. As you can see, as you probably know, the journals all sit in a quartile that sometimes are included in university requirements. Next slide, please. So as an aside to these journal metrics, what you also see is that journals that have very high impact factors or very high site scores also have very high rejection rates. So if you would submit to a journal like Computers and Human Behavior, it has, I think, a rejection rate of 98%. So the chances of getting published in such a journal, and every field has its own top journals, are very low. If you want to get something published quickly, or if you aren't quite sure that the top journal in the field is the thing that you're going to get published in, then maybe something that has, we call it, more modest metrics and higher acceptance rates might be better for your work at that point in time. Next slide, please. So we have a tool which is an AI-driven tool where you can enter your abstract, and then it'll find a list of journals that might be suitable for you. This only suggests Elsevier journals, and also shows you if they're open access or subscription. So it might be something to use the next time you want to submit to submit a manuscript that you have prepared. And once you've selected the right journal, the paper comes into the hands of someone like Sarang. So he is a scientific editor, but he works for Elsevier full time. So he's an in-house editor that we work with on some journals. He looks at a lot of papers every day, so he has a lot of insight into what goes right and what can go wrong when making a submission to a journal. And he's going to guide you through that process now. Sarang, over to you.
Thank you, Thijs. I hope you can hear me properly. Yeah, so I'll be talking about what actually editors look into manuscript and how to craft your manuscripts and get it flawless. So the publication journey of the manuscript starts from submission to the journal, which is initially screened by the editorial team, and then it goes to the specialist editors, and then they see whether the manuscript has to be desk rejected or it can be returned for minor changes and then submitted back to the journals. So once the manuscript passes the editorial assessment, it goes into the peer reviews, and then the reviewer comments will be there. The editor will judge whether it has to be sent for major revision, minor revision, or reject. So I'll be talking about the life cycle of a manuscript and what goes wrong where, and what as an author you can do in order to make sure that you are not stuck in any of these loops while you are publishing your manuscripts. So when you prepare your manuscripts, the mindset of an author should be focused towards different aspects of the manuscripts. One is towards the editor, one is reviewer, and one is reader. So these all make the hallmark of a good manuscripts. So when you start structuring your article, the basic things is to, check the author guidelines for journals, check what is the word count limit, whether highlights are needed or not, what is the overall length, whether headings and subheadings are to be written as a prescribed way, or the journal is asking for the manuscript file to be anonymized or not. Because in some journals, they follow double-blinded reviews, and if you do not anonymize the manuscripts, it can just get delayed, because then there'll be multiple rounds of sending back to the author and then to the editor. And the common structure that a manuscript follows, ensure that you follow the structure that is in the journal guidelines. The basic structure is having title, abstract, keywords, then main body text, followed by few declarations, wherein the ethical approval when you are working on humans or animals, it's important right now to take ethical approval from institutional review board or the equivalent authority. And also, these days we see a lot of AI generated content. So it's very important to declare the use of AI if you have done. So now, when you craft your article, what you have to see is what's important in the manuscript. So the points that I am raising here, they are very obvious points. It's like why how this can be missed. But trust me, when we read the manuscripts, a lot of the manuscripts actually have weaknesses in these aspects as well. One is the main is the title and abstract. It has to be very clear. And when you write the abstract, it should not be too technical. It should basically tells you about what were known, what were the objectives, how you plan to, or how you kind of study that objectives, and what are the results and conclusion. So this kind of makes a very clean abstract where you can basically follow the chain of ideas and digest the abstract clearly. The next section essentially is the introduction and literature review. So most people, what they do, they just write the introduction in a way that this paper finds that, this paper finds that, and then we are going to do that. But actually what helps is it's basically the art of storytelling, how you connect different research and how you justify why you are doing what you are doing. So that's important. What part of, that's why introduction and literature review is should be there in the manuscripts in a way that it explains. Just by reading it, the reader knows what's going to be in the research manuscripts. Next is the research questions. Most people do not explicitly write research questions, and why it matters a lot, because explicitly writing it just gives a reader a kind of a sense what's actually they are gonna focus on. So it's a good practice to explicitly write research questions and hypothesis, whatever you have. You can use subsections for that. Uh, it is ideally followed by a method section. Also here, it's a good practice to write method section in detail. Everything, that you have done inside out, it has to be part of method section. Why it's important? It's important to ensure the manuscript is robust, and second, that it is reproducible. So you must have seen, especially in life sciences, what happens. People do not write, a lot of things. Suppose catalog number of antibodies and stuff, or in social sciences, in qualitative research, they would say that they conducted this analysis like thematic analysis or something, but they do not capture the essentialities of those analysis. Then it becomes really hard to replicate it by some other, and that's when the research gets delayed, and it can also lead to redundant of resources in a non-practical way. So that's why methods are very important in a way that it has to be detailed. Figures and table captions. So again, most paper has figures and tables, right? What most papers lack is essentially the captions. When I say about captions, this has to be details. Why? Because most readers, what they do not read the whole paper. They just read the results and tables and figures. If your captions are detailed, anybody can get a good snapshot of the manuscript just by reading the captions and just going through the figures. So that's actually very important as well, to make sure that you have written it in a comprehensive way, which can allow readers to easily interpret the whatever is in the manuscripts. Apart from that, it's very important to cite limitations, because when we try to hide limitations, thinking that this may be taken in a negative way, but that's actually not correct, because every research faces limitations, and it's the way for you to communicate with the audience that our research is not perfect, but we are getting there, and this is where we have hit the road, and we are having troubles with this. So it's a good practice to cite whatever limitations you have faced, And most important these days are the declarations. You should declare whether you have any conflict of interest, whether ethical approval was taken, who gave it, what's the number, when it was provided, and the use of generative AI or whatever, like for the analysis if you have used AI, for the writing if you have, for editing if you have used AI, you should declare, because being transparent is very important in this context. So once you craft the manuscript and submit it to the journal, it gets assigned to us, and then we go through editorial assessments. So there are two ways of, two checks that we do for editorial assessment. One is the general check, wherein we see whether manuscript follows journal policies, whether it is complete, it has all the sections, it is in the scope of the journal, and whether it is in compliance with journal standards or ethical standards. General check are, again, I might be seeing as repeating the information about ethical approval and AI use declaration, but it's important. And once I repeat multiple times, it will be registered in your brain that these are very important. So these are the general checks. And then we do quality checks. So the quality checks are, I call it 4 R's. 4 R's, one of the R is readability. So the ideas in the manuscript has to be communicated very effectively. It's fine for the manuscript to be moderately lengthy, but it is fine. It is great if you could, curate your ideas in a way that the transition is smooth, and aims and motivation of the study is properly written, rationale is justified, the hypotheses are explicitly written, and these things matter. So some people ask us whether it's important to write a cover letter or not. You won't need it for multiple manuscripts, or most of the manuscripts, but I personally prefer cover letter, because it's the only way authors can communicate to the editor with confidential information. How did the research pan out, whether there were any difficulties, whether they want any reviewers to be excluded from the peer review. So a cover letter, if needed, should contain more things than what is actually in the manuscripts, because in the manuscript, editor will see what is in the manuscript. So a detailed cover letter, talking about pain points or inspiration for whatever authors have done, goes a long way. So this is one R. The second R is the reproducibility. As I already said, it's very important to detail the methods. What we see most often, people take it for granted that most readers would know what this method is all about, but that's actually not true. So it goes a long way when you write more about the kind of, I'm giving a social sciences perspective in a way that what we see are missing, like details of scale used, what are the reliabilities and validities, what is the sampling procedure, what is the demographics of the people, and what are there any exclusion inclusion criteria. The list is endless. Similarly, for statistical and data analysis, it's good to explain in detail what actually has been done in data analysis. As I gave one example already about qualitative data analysis, it's important to list all the points that author have used in order to ensure that the research is reproducible. The other one is robustness. So before you start your research, you already have a study design in mind, and it's very important to ensure that study design is robust. One example is having appropriate, control groups. The validity of skills that you have used is valid for a particular population, and the sample size calculations are on the chart so that you have enough power to explain what your results is, and whether there were any confounding factors in the analysis, like there might be differences in the age, or there might be differences in cognitive ability, or there might be differences in socioeconomic status that you have considered in order to do the analysis. So these are important checks that you have to do while you plan your study, and then when you actually conduct your study. The last one is the relevance and novelty. Most people, including me, when I was doing research, used to believe that my research is gonna change the course of the human life. But sometimes what you are actually doing, researching, somebody would have already published it. But that doesn't mean that the research is not doing enough of the contribution. So it's a good practice to explicitly mention what is the incremental advance, what is the contribution and relevance of what you have studied on literature, on in course of science as well. And most people doesn't write it, and that's when we have to struggle in order to understand what's actually being the relevance of the study. So even though sometimes you feel that we have not done very novel research, it's all right, not every research is novel. But what matters is how you embrace that thing, and how you appreciate your research. And the best way to do is to be honest about what you think is the relevance and novelty about your research. So this once these checks are passed, the manuscript goes to peer review. Ideally, we tend to get two reviewers for the manuscript, see their reports, and then see what they have talked about, and then make decision upon that. But sometimes we do need a third reviewer as well. If the comments are not that great, sometimes some reviewers just submit a one-line report, and that's not useful to editors and authors as well. So we try to get another one. And once they submit the report, then we tend to make a decision. So there is a misconception across, academic community that editors blindly follow, what reviewer recommends. So reviewer cannot make a decision on behalf of editors. It's just a recommendation. So it is up to the editor what they think is important in reviewer comments, and how do they move the course of the manuscripts. So sometimes both reviewers can say reject, but it's not true that editors will reject it 100% of the time. I have a lot of cases where both reviewers were against the publication, and we pushed the manuscript through, guided the authors, how to take care of the revisions, and the reviewers were happy in one or two rounds of revision, and the manuscripts, like the fate of manuscript was accepted. So ideally, what editors see, when they see the review reports, whether there is any fundamental flaw in study design or analysis that can not be, easily addressed in revision. That's the reason editors may reject the manuscript. Second is whether the changes can be so significant that, or it may change the overall message of the manuscripts. But in that context, editors tend to ask for rejection and then resubmission as a new submission. So it goes as a new submission after a while. And once you receive the review reports, it's very important to understand the review reports and engage with it. By engagement, I mean read them inside out, read in between the lines, and when you craft your response to reviewers, make sure they are detailed, because most often we see what people say is, now when we receive the response letters, now there are two scenarios. One, a very detailed response letter that thank you for your comment. We saw this, and we tried this to, to alleviate the response, or, address the concern. Other kind of response letters are, thank you, done. Thank you, we have processed it. Now, as an editor, when you see both response letters, I'm sure most of you will agree with me that we will prefer the first response letter because it's detailed, it gives all the information. So that's what, as a researcher, we should do, be engaged with comments, and then provide a detailed response letter. It makes the life of reviewers also easier, in order to ensure that they see what they have asked for and what you have addressed. So it's really important to have a detailed response letter. So once everything is done, then again it goes into editorial pipeline, and then again whether major revision, reject, accept, minor revision. So then, like after one or two rounds of review, the manuscript ends up most often accepting. So like my experience tell me, out of 3,000 manuscripts I have handled so far, if your manuscripts goes into a peer review and you are being honest and responsive with the comments, the likelihood of the manuscript getting accepted is more than 70%. So if editor thinks it's good content, it will go to peer review, and you have already secured 70% of the acceptance. So what could go wrong in that 30% is basically you are not being responsive to the comments. You have not thought through the revisions and you just made some revisions, not a detailed response letters, then it can be rejected. And other things that can also lead to rejection even at the verge of acceptance, and it happens that there are last minute authorship changes done to the manuscript, just prior to acceptance, the author says that we want to add a new author, which is unethical at the moment, because once everything is done, why there is a need of adding new authors? We identify issues with ethical approval that also breaches general policies, and then the manuscript can get rejected even at the last point. Significant use of AI, and it's not declared. Why declaration is important, Thijs will talk more about this at the later part of the slides. Sometimes we also identify that we accepted the manuscript and the authors are saying that we have already submitted somewhere else, and they also have accepted the manuscript. So that's simultaneous submission, and that's also unethical. That can also lead to rejection. And very rare, we also see that even after final minor revision, where we requested textual changes, the author put a lot of new data, which actually can change the content and the message of the manuscripts. Then in those cases, what we have to do is start the peer review once again. So these are very important points that you should consider before you submit, whether anything can go wrong or right here. I can understand that if there is a major revision, somebody else might be doing the work and be added as author, but that's a very different case. But at the verge of acceptance or post acceptance, adding new authors, it's unethical. So these are the checkpoints that you should consider while you make sure that you submit the manuscripts. So these all lies in a cluster where it voids the general policies and voids the ethical considerations. So now Thijs will take you towards what are the ethical considerations and what are the general policies, and what is the acceptable use of AI in the research. Hand
Yes,
over to you, Thijs.
thank you, Sarang. I was just typing an answer to a question in the chat, how to deal with high APCs. But instead of typing it, I'll just address it briefly. So APCs are only connected to open access journals. So if you don't have funding to cover these article processing charges, you could select a journal that is subscription based, which generally don't have any, certainly don't have APCs, and generally anymore don't have publication charges. If you do have to select open access because either you require it for some reason or another, or you think it would be highly beneficial, then at Elsevier we have a number of journals that run which is called a geographical pricing policy. The journal that Sarang works on, Acta Psychologica, is an example of that. So in those cases, there are geography-based discounts to the APCs, and if for all authors from India in those journals, there is a 90% discount on the APC. So you're only eligible to pay 10% of the APC, which is, let's say, almost as good as it gets. It's not 100% discount, but it is as close as we can get to that. So again, it's about journal selection, knowing what you want before you select a journal, and then picking the journal that complies with both what you need and what you have the resources for. So ethical considerations. Mostly all the journals that we have are part of COPE, which is the Committee on Publication Ethics, and they provide guidance on how to deal with ethical cases. But at the end of the day, it's for a large part up to the editors of the individual journals to determine how we handle these kinds of things. Next slide, Sarang. What we've seen over the last years, and this is only a slide up to 2022, so woefully out of date, but it was made by someone that I know a while ago, and it kind of reflects the situation that we are in now. These are the number of ethical cases that we've seen. So in 2017, it was a really, really low number, and 2017 is not that long ago, right? There was a couple hundred cases, let's say. This might all be underestimating the actual numbers, but it's a good reflection. And it just went up and up and up. And in 2022, which is already a few years ago, according to this, we were up to 3,000 cases. 2023 was an even worse year, and 24 and 5 kind of stabilized. But we've seen really an explosion in the number of ethical issues with papers, and this is related to all sorts of things that I'll go into on the next slide. But there's a variety of ethical cases or ethical issues that we see in the papers that have been published. These things happen all around the world, so it's good to think about this for a bit. So on this first slide, we have what we would call very serious ethical issues, which, as are most things that we discuss during these types of webinars, might be obvious, but it's good to discuss. Fabrication, which is making up data, obviously is a serious ethical issue. We're all in the business of science, so to say, to improve things in the world, whatever it is that you're improving. And if someone's making up data, it's just a waste of everyone's time. Fabrication of data is quite hard to spot, especially with all the advanced tools that we have now and complicated data sets. But at the end of the day, if it's something that's really interesting but falsified, some people will try to reproduce it and will find that it's irreproducible, and someone will find out. Falsification of data is similar, but then you're not manipulating existing research data, which is also effectively a waste of time, because it doesn't reflect the actual nature of the research that you've done. Then plagiarism, which is taking previous work from others or from yourself, passing it off as new, which is something that you can use text from others, but then you have to indicate that it's a quote and put it in quotation marks, then it's fine. We have a really good tool in our submission system. Next slide, yeah. So it's a similarity check. So every paper that we get is run through this tool, and we can basically see how much of the text was used from other sources. So yeah, we still see plagiarism in submissions, but we never publish it anymore, because we can just check it very easily and reject papers that have unacceptable levels of plagiarism, or let's say duplicate text. Next slide, please. Other issues that we see are duplicate submissions, which means submitting your paper to multiple journals at the same time. This is problematic at a number of levels. We had a case last week where we had gone through the entire review and revision process, I think 3 rounds of revisions. Then we accepted a paper, and then the author said, "Oh, we've already published it in a different journal, so please withdraw the paper." So the main thing that does is just wastes everybody's time, mainly the time of peer reviewers. And it's hard enough to find peer reviewers already, let alone if we ask them to review a paper and then not make use of those reviews and their time. Also, when you submit to at least Elsevier journals, you have to declare that you're not submitting that paper, that it has not been and will not be submitted to another journal during the course of the evaluation. So you've also breached that part of the commitment that we've undertaken. We have a really good tool to detect duplicate submissions at Elsevier journals. And if you submit to 2 Elsevier journals, you'll be rejected for both, and we won't consider it again for both of those journals. Authorship disputes seem to have also been on the rise, and which is where authors disagree on the authorship, let's say the lineup of authors on a paper, either the actual order in which people are in, or whether someone is in or not in as an author on a paper. So it's very important to agree on that before the paper is submitted even. As a publisher, we don't really get involved in authorship disputes because the reasons behind this are vary greatly. Sometimes people disagree, and then it's not up to us to solve their disagreement. Sometimes we've had cases where it was a married couple submitted a paper, then during the revision phase they got divorced, and obviously they didn't see eye to eye anymore. So it was an authorship dispute, but also a marital dispute. And as you can imagine, that's certainly not something that I want to be involved in. So resolve any disputes about authorship or be clear about authorship prior to submission. Then we also see, and this is on the rise now, citation manipulation. So this is where authors, reviewers, or editors don't look at the merits of citations in a paper, but cite for different reasons. So cite because someone that you know published something and they need some extra citations for something, or a reviewer might recommend citing papers by that reviewer, so that the reviewer gets more citations. This is totally unethical and should not be done, but yeah, it happens. So whenever you have the idea that a reviewer or an editor is making unreasonable requests in citations, requesting citations to be added, then you can always flag it up to the publisher directly. So either the editor-in-chief of the journal, if they are not involved in the review process, or the publisher directly, because we take these things very seriously, and it's not something that should happen. So if we find reviewers do this, we would just simply never invite them to review anymore. And if editors are involved, then we'll take the necessary actions there. So please let us know. Next slide, please. So COPE has a really good document about authorship. The gist of it is discuss it early and discuss it prior to submitting a paper. Authorship disputes can prevent a paper from being published. It can prevent extremely long delays if the authors can't figure it out. We refer them to their institutions, and if an institution has to do an investigation into authorship, we're not talking about weeks. We might be talking about months or years before that gets resolved. Next slide, please. As an example of this citation manipulation and the impact thereof, this is a couple of years ago, 17 journals were found to be involved in sort of mutual citation manipulation. So one journal would cite another journal more because the editor would recommend references to be added, and all of those journals lost their impact factors, which of course then really defeats the purpose of them getting the citations in the first place. So the consequences for journals can be very severe as well, which is why, which is one of the reasons why we are very careful with these things and address any issues that we see as well. Next slide. Then there are paper mills. I'm not sure if you heard about these. These are companies that sell accepted manuscripts or co-authorships to accepted manuscripts in papers that are published in indexed journals. So effectively, a company either makes up or steals a paper, gets it to a stage where it's accepted by a journal. Then they start looking outside for people who might be interested in publishing a paper in that journal. Sell you for, let's say, $1,000 an authorship on that paper, and then without you having done anything, this effectively nonsensical paper gets published in a journal, and you have another publication to your name. This is quite a widespread practice, unfortunately, and it's hugely time-consuming and time-wasting, but it happens. Yeah, the only thing we can say is please don't engage with these types of companies. It's in the long run, it will not benefit anyone. Yeah, try not to. This is a slide that shows you, it gives you an idea of the number of attractions. the paper mills really started coming up in sort of after the 2020s in volume. And you can see also that the number of retracted papers and retraction notices has gone up significantly since then. So generally, we will find out that papers are paper mill things or fabricated data. It might take us a while, but we'll find out, and then we'll retract the paper. And then that reflects very poorly on the authors in any case. Next slide. So the paper mills also increasingly use generative AI in their processes. So then you have an AI generated paper that you buy from a paper mill, which makes even less sense. So let's talk about AI for a little bit. It's a big thing in the academic community at the moment. So generative AI is an umbrella term for learning algorithms, all based on large language models. I'm sure we all have a lot of experience in using things like ChatGPT and Bard and Bing. The main thing, because the output of these large language models is often indistinguishable from human written text, is that human oversight and control is essential. It makes such a big difference, and I'll go into a few examples in a minute. Next slide, please. So in the publishing community, AI has been quite a revolution. It's come up and has grown very, very quickly. So the 58% of people that we interviewed in this report used AI tools in their work, which is massive. From 21% in 2024 and probably 0 in 2020 because it didn't really exist then. A lot of people feel undertrained or overwhelmed by the tools that are available. In these final minutes of the presentation, I'm going to give you some footholds to use AI in your work responsibly. Yeah, next slide. That's right. So, what are the key concerns related to Gen AI in scientific writing and publishing? One is that that tools may generate incorrect or made up information, which is really the biggest problem, one of the biggest problems that we have. What we're seeing now, it goes in waves a little bit. The wave that we're in now is that people have used Gen AI to reformat their manuscript and also their references. And the AI tool has deleted 10, 20, 50 references and put in 50 new ones that are nonsense. AI will always give you generative AI will always give you an answer, even though it doesn't know the answer. So the problems with that are, potentially massive. We see papers now of authors that have published, large numbers of papers that we now have to retract because 50 of their references have been generated by AI and don't exist. So they used it, they didn't check the output, obviously, and they just submitted the paper, and the references look fine because they have everything that they need, but they're fake, and the paper gets retracted. Also, models totally lack transparency. You have no idea what the tools are based on, what data they have, what ethical standards were used for the inclusion of data, and what biases were incorporated into the data set that the models use. You have no idea, so then how can, as an academic, it's difficult to justify using a tool if you don't really understand what data went into it. Then there's an environmental impact. AI systems used a lot of power and a lot of water globally to keep running. Next slide. Another issue is potentially lack of up-to-date information. So some of the freely available AI tools are running data up to 2024, for instance. So then you would lack anything that was generated after that time. And linked to that, most tools are not trained on scientific data, so they would not know all the content or not have access to all the content that's, for instance, in Scopus. And then if it doesn't have access to it, it cannot use that data as well. The middle one, I think, is maybe the most concerning of all, an over-reliance on AI tools. So it can erode critical thinking, and I think that's really important to keep in mind. I don't think this is the same as, the invention of the calculator, and then people said, well, if people use a calculator, they won't be able to calculate, 1 + 1 is 2 anymore in the future. I think this goes deeper than that. This goes to real human critical thinking and the ability to question and interrogate conclusions and data to a great detail. So I think this is maybe the most significant issue that we have to be aware of. Next slide. I'll get to what you should or shouldn't be doing in a minute. So the community has responded quite diversely. Some universities say no Gen AI at all. Some publishers say no Gen AI at all, although that's changing. All of this will probably be refined and adapted over time, and I think generally speaking, we'll look for a middle ground between saying, be careful, and but these are the applications that you can use AI for if you need it. Next slide, please. So for authors, what is the current Gen AI guidance from Elsevier? I think the main thing is responsible use with human oversight. I think if you forget everything else from this publication, from this last part of the presentation, I think that's the main thing. So AI is not a substitute for human critical thinking, and authors are always responsible and accountable for all the content in the manuscript, including the stuff that you have that you run through Gen AI. So what is important to do? Review and verify all AI generated output. As I said in the example with the references, even if you just ask it to change the comma to a semicolon, it might take out references and replace it by made up ones. So you have to verify all of them. If you don't do it, then our tools for identifying these hallucinated references are getting a lot better, and we'll find it and we'll reject your paper for undeclared AI use. The second main thing that you have to do is disclose any and all use of generative AI in the submission, and we will put a statement that reflects that in the manuscript. If you disclose AI use and you review and verify the output of generative AI use in your submission, then generally you'll be fine, because you've checked what the output is and you've said that you use these tools. So you've been careful and you've been transparent. And I think that's always those are the two things where people run afoul with everything. It's plagiarism or with duplicate submissions or all the issues that we see. It's about not being transparent and not being careful about the tools that you use. So if you do those two things, then you are likely to at least not be in breach of anything. Then the editors might say your use of generative AI is not appropriate, but at least then the editors can, or the reviewers can make a decision based on the facts. Next slide, please. So for editors and reviewers, we tell them not to upload any of your manuscript into AI tools, as this violates confidentiality and authors' rights. They're not allowed to upload peer review reports or editorial decision letters, as this has confidential information. And generative AI should not be used in the review process, because if we wanted ChatGPT to review a paper, then we would put it in ChatGPT ourselves. We wouldn't ask you to put it in ChatGPT, put the output in our review system and then use it that way. We could do that ourselves. We choose to ask you specifically for your expertise, not ChatGPT's expertise. And for figures, images, and artwork, at the moment we say don't use generative AI at all to generate or alter images. The reason behind this is mainly that you don't know what the AI tool is doing in the background with the input that you share, but also what other inputs it's drawing from, and that has some potential copyright issues, for instance. So the AI tool will drag bits and pieces from already published, already generated content and mash it together into the output that you've requested, but you have no idea where all that content is coming from. So you might be breaching copyright of other authors. And because you're using that material in an official publication and you're then asserting copyright over that image, you might be breaching someone else's copyright, either an author or a journal. Also, Also, we see a lot of errors in AI-generated images, silly errors, but also sort of quite delicate things. I'm sure this will get better, but at the moment, image generation using generative AI is not allowed for academic publications. So in summary, responsible use, which means check the output of all generative AI content that you want to include in your publication. Even if you ask it to review your own paper, check everything, because it will change text. It will remove words and change them to other words, references, all these kinds of things. Our policies are there to protect authors' rights, not you as an author, but also all the authors that have gone before you. We are continuously updating our guidelines, so also keep a look out for those, because the AI tools are changing so quickly. Also, our policies have to adapt accordingly. So it's definitely not standing still. This is we can skip this one. So we just launched a Gen AI based tool called Leap Space that can support authors in their entire research process. It's very new. I've only used it a few times. It seems to be it does a few things really well. So it might be something to have a look at. You can ask it questions. It's trained on Scopus data, and it's let's say a safe space to explore let's say a truly academically oriented AI tool. I don't know how we're doing for time. Are we already over? Might be.
We still have some time, but there are questions
Okay.
also.
Yes. So I'll run through these last things because that might be a few of the questions that we can address then. So first one is article transfer. So if you submit a manuscript to a journal and it gets accepted, that's great. If it gets rejected, what we might do is refer you to another journal within the Elsevier portfolio. And this is then a journal where we think your paper might be more suitable. So for instance, you submit to Computers and Human Behavior. It's one of the journals that I am responsible for. It's the absolute top journal within the field, very high rejection rate. If the editors say no because it's not novel enough or something, we have a journal called Computers and Human Behavior Reports, which actually now is the second highest ranked journal in this field. So it's a really good journal as well, which with a much higher acceptance rate. So it has let's say a desk rejection rate of 50% instead of 92%. If there the editors still say, no, it's not for us, then we have a journal called Acta Psychologica, which is a broad scope psychology journal with let's say a more liberal approach to things like novelty. So then we might send your paper there. This is not because we think the original paper is bad, but it might just be unsuitable for the journal that you submitted it to. Next slide. So you can volunteer to review as well. If you never get invited, but you want to do something, there's a reviewer hub where you can volunteer for specific journals that you would want to review for. In that case, you'll be added to the reviewer database as a volunteer, and editors can pick up your name more easily than they would if you do not volunteer. Next slide. If you want to join an editorial team, this is a bit of a lengthy process, but it might be something that you would want to do. First thing, so this is the journey of the editor-in-chief of one of the journals that I work for. So she started out publishing a paper in that specific journal, found that it was really aligned with the content that she was working on, and was quite a good journal in that field. So she started reviewing for the journal. After a few reviews, she was invited to join the editorial board, continued reviewing, and after a while, she was flagged up and invited to become an associate editor, which, more often than not, associate editors are picked based on who does most or best reviews for a journal. And after a few years of associate editor, she was promoted to become editor-in-chief of the journal. It is possible, of course, to jump in at any point in this process, but if you want to make sure, if there's a specific journal that you would want to be on the editorial board of, this would be a really good way to go about it. It's just about engaging with the editors. Yeah, go on there. Should I share my data? This is a short one. Yes, totally. We have a specific journal in which you can share data if you want to. You can also always add it to the paper that you're publishing, or share it on a publicly accessible repository and then add a link to the paper. It really, really helps with reproducibility, confidence in science, and we don't necessarily see a whole lot of downside to sharing data with publishing. Next slide is about preprint servers. Can I submit my paper to a preprint server? Totally, yes. We have our own one actually called SSRN. For double-blinded peer-reviewed journals, sometimes it's difficult for us to guarantee the double-blind peer review process because there is a preprint version of the paper out there. But that's really the only problem that might arise in journals that have double anonymized peer review. And even that's not a huge issue as long as the reviewers don't look for your paper whilst they're reviewing. Next slide is about predatory journals, but I already discussed that. And then the last one is about social media and promoting your work after publication. And should I do that? Yes, most certainly. The author of the paper is the best marketeer for that paper because you know everything and anything about it. So definitely share your paper as much as you can, because that will only help people read it, cite it, and amplify the work that you've already done. So these are the take-home messages that we'll leave up. I'll just have a look. So the high APC, I'm looking at on the questions. So there's a question, content of mine, help of AI to make the language more professional, checking the grammar. Is it plagiarism? So if I understand the question correctly, you've used AI for, let's call it language polishing. So you put the article in an AI tool and ask it to improve the grammar. So there's plagiarism, but it is something that you need to be careful with because I mean, there are good AI tools, not generative AI tools, but language editing tools that don't make up things as they go. So was it Grammarly and tools like that? They're AI based, but they are in principle fine to use. Issues when people use things like chat to polish up the language of their paper and then not checking the output. So that's the main thing. if you use a generative AI tool for language editing, then really check the output, make sure that everything is the way it should be, and that the tool hasn't changed the meaning or the intention behind the paper, and also really check the references very, very well. And I would also then declare that in the paper so that the editors know that you've done this. So then you've checked it, you've declared it, then you've ticked all the boxes, you've done all the right things, and then it's up to the editors and the reviewers to decide. Next question. If we submit our article to one Elsevier journal and get rejected, does that impact chance of publication with other Elsevier journals? Yes, and can editors send it to another journal if they feel it would be more appropriate? Yes. So as I just talked about, this transfer service we have when it goes from one Elsevier journal to another Elsevier journal, that happens all the time. If you get rejected by one journal, it doesn't impact your chances with another journal at all. Most of the times, the editors of the new journal won't even know that you've already submitted it somewhere else, unless you don't change your cover letter, and the cover letter says, "Dear editor of journal A," when you've submitted it to journal B. Then they, of course, know that you've submitted it somewhere else before. But even then, most editors will just chalk that up as, a little carelessness, but not a huge problem. So it won't affect the way that the editors look at the paper. Sometimes when a journal has been reviewed for one journal, when a paper has been reviewed for one journal and it gets an offer to be transferred through our internal system, we take the reviews and we send them to the next journal. So then, of course, they know that it's already been reviewed for another journal, but then we send it to a journal that is open to accepting transferred papers. So then, of course, it won't negatively affect their opinion, and it will only make things go a little bit more quickly. And then there's a question: can authors use Authenticate to check similarity? Authenticate is a system that is, in principle, it's not free to use, but you can get an account. I guess you would have to pay for it. I'm not sure. It's not an Elsevier product. So Authenticate is from the same company as this other thing called it's a duplicate submission universities use a lot, but I forget the name. It uses the same software. Sarang, do you know the name?
Turnitin.
Oh yes, exactly. Turnitin. So Authenticate and Turnitin are similar, some similar systems. The only difference between the two is that Authenticate does not store the version that you submit, and Turnitin does. So if you run a paper through Turnitin, then it will store that in its database and scan future papers across that as well. So if you submit your paper again, then it will pick up the original time that you submitted it. But in principle, Authenticate and Turnitin do a similar job. How do I get more details about open access agreements? So we have a website that has all the agreements that we have with all the institutions. For India, I think we have one agreement with all the institutions at the same time, as far as I'm aware. So that's easy enough. But maybe Shweta can say something about that.
Yes, so there's an agreement in place, so I'll be sharing that information if needed with the university library.
Okay. If I can find it, I'll put the link to the agreement page that we have in the chat as well. Recording.
And there is
Yes,
one
sure.
question.
Sorry.
So there is one question about, can you mute Thijs, because we are getting echoed. Yeah. So I want to know about article, review article, how the evaluation. I think I can take this one. I guess there are two questions here. So both on the editor. this thing. So for the review articles, if you want to basically increase its efficacy, I guess the best practice is to first understand what's behind the review article, what message you are trying to pass. And most important thing here is, although it's review article just feels like it's just summary of articles, but it's not usually is. The main challenge that goes into the review writing a review article is how you actually choose the articles to be cited. I mean, what is your criteria for choosing the articles? So I say, if you want to make your review article flawless, the best way is to understand, uh, kind of use a Prisma based approach where you can select the articles and then synthesize or summarize those articles in a review article. So this is what people don't usually do. They just randomly cite the articles without any proper, I mean, inclusion or exclusion criteria. So yeah, you can think about more about, what about the article selection to make your review article, I mean, more impactful. In qualitative studies, if we use tools like Atlas for graph and content generation, will that be okay, since you said do not use figures and graphs using AI? I understand when you say Atlas, it's more of a software like GraphPad Prism, SPSS and stuff. So using those softwares is completely all right because it's not generative AI. I mean, you are plugging in the data and they are well curated softwares in order to generate data-wise graphs. I mean, in Excel, you can do the same thing. So this is not generating based on your prompt, right? And this is not using any trained data in order to generate your graph. So it's completely all right to use the softwares that are made for statistical analysis. Yeah. And I think this is it. Yeah, we don't have any more questions. Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
add something? Yeah. So there was one question about permissible use cases of AI. I think it's really important to make a distinction between AI as a writing tool and AI as a research tool. So it's perfectly acceptable to use AI as a research tool, finding information that you want to investigate further. We publish a lot of things on AI generated images and what, if that makes a difference, an AI generated image versus let's say a regular photo, if that makes a difference in, for instance, product marketing or something like that. So in those cases, it's a component of your research process. The main thing that we were discussing here is when you use AI to either write or edit the manuscript that you are intending to submit. And here, you just have to be careful that the output is aligned with what it is that you want to say. You're the author of the paper. The AI tool is not, and should not be listed as an author of the paper. It's a tool that you use in the process, but you need to make sure that the output of the tool is appropriate to the message that you want to share. So you can use AI to language polish, but you have to read the output carefully to make sure that it doesn't make changes that you don't agree with. It's your paper, so you have to agree with the output. So if you use AI to polish the language, don't read it and submit it to us, then you're putting the responsibility of checking your AI generated output on us. So if we see something that we don't agree with, and you haven't acknowledged that you used AI, then we'll reject the paper because then our confidence level in the paper as a whole drops quite significantly.
Guys, I think we've answered everything, and considering the time constraint that we have, thank you so much for the wonderful insights shared by you and Dr. Mahajan. I'm sure the audience would get great benefits out of it. So thank you once again for all of you being such an engaged and thoughtful audience. As we conclude, I would like to leave you with one key takeaway. Publishing is not just about sharing results, it's about upholding integrity, being transparent in your research, and responsible at every step. As we navigate evolving the tools, especially the AI ones, let us have them used wisely enhancing our work without compromising on the ethics, and being mindful of the common pitfalls that we shared during the presentation and committed to the best practices will only strengthen your research, but it would not just strengthen your research, that's what I try to say, but also the credibility of the wider academic community. I hope today's session has given you clarity, confidence, and a renewed sense of responsibility in your publishing journey. Thank you once again, and I look forward to seeing your impactful contribution
Thank
to the
you. Thank you,
research.
Shweta. There is a requirement of please share the recording of this webinar. We will put it on our
Definitely.
social media so that those who could not participate, they can learn when they are free. Right? Thank you, all of you.
Definitely.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would request the audience to kindly scan the QR code and share your feedback so that every time we come to you, we are more prepared. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. I'll stop sharing this now and we'll end the session. Have a good day, all of you. Thank you.